I go to the gym, 4th Avenue gym out here in the foothills.
Uh-huh.
Me and Jessica try to go at least Monday through Friday,
Cool.
sometimes Saturday.
Yeah.
But I see these old guys. I mean, they are just inspiring.
They're committed.
They are committed, and they are inspired. I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah. So, and a lot of times I deal with those individuals or dealt with them in the office. They have this misperception that you can exercise away aging.
Is that right?
You cannot exercise
No,
away aging.
it's going to happen.
It's going to happen, right?
Deterioration of
You can maintain ability
Mm-hmm.
to a point. I mean, you look at certain leaders of churches who are in their 90s.
Yeah. Still got it?
And
Yeah.
still got it. And yeah, it drops off quickly after about mid 80s, unless there's a
Is that right?
yeah.
I've heard the anecdote that age is just a number until you get to 80 now. Is that what I need to? So you gotta. There's the caveat.
You know, it just so the biggest factor on mobility, I believe, is maintaining a weight, a body mass index that allows for mobility.
Easier said than done,
Easier said than done.
especially with the foods these days.
Correct.
It's cheaper to buy a box of Cheez-Its probably than it is to buy a good hamburger or something like that.
So, you know, I'm not sure how much you are into nutrition and things like that, but, you know, what we're experiencing is two aspects of the way in which prepackaged foods affect us. Number one, they are loaded with substances that make them appealing. So they have scientific ways of affecting taste and texture and those types of things that give you a sense of, boy, this is really good and I want more.
Uh-huh.
What a great way to sell a product. I want more. And unfortunately, they're not satiating.
Mm-hmm.
And so you keep eating more. And unfortunately, they have a lot of caloric value. And so your body has to do something with that. And it most commonly stores it as fat.
It's like a Twinkie.
It's exactly what the Twinkie phenomenon is.
Man, they're good.
They are yummy, and just like the advertisement says, you can't have just one.
That's right. Once you start, you can't stop.
Yeah.
I'm pulling up what Martine had sent over, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to read this. You're going to have to tell me if it's accurate. I don't know where he got it.
Okay.
Okay?
Probably from my email.
Probably from email. Okay. Hopefully it's accurate. So it says, Dr. Ron Clark, you've been here in the community for what, like 15 years?
Almost. 2012 was
Okay.
when my wife and I moved here.
Yeah. You came from Notre Dame, didn't you?
We did. We lived in the South Bend area. We actually lived in an address that would say Granger, kind of like the foothills is to Yuma, what the Granger is to South Bend.
Gotcha.
But was there working at the South Bend Medical Clinic and had a great career there. My children all tended to graduate, save my daughter, and our parents were aging, and we felt like we didn't want to be quite so far across the country, and so we knew some people here. Dr. Pear was someone that I'd actually met in Texas, where I did my residency training. And Dr. Runyon also happened to be at that same location.
Is that right?
Although we weren't there simultaneously. It's so kind of interesting that all three of us ended up in the same location practicing. But we have roots in California, so we felt like it was a good option. And the commitment that was made is it would never snow in Yuma, and it so far has never snowed.
Hasn't disappointed.
Yeah, we've heard stories about, well, once in a long time ago there was a brief snowfall and it was on the ground for an hour, but we've never seen it snow.
And so Heather's from California, isn't she?
She is.
Yeah.
She's from Orange County.
And so she's your better half, and she has been supporting you the whole journey from undergrad, medical school, practice, and she herself is in the industry, right?
So she's a registered nurse. She had a degree in nursing from BYU, but while we were in the Midwest, she got Bachelor's of Nursing Science from University of Indiana, who'll be playing in the college football playoff. So she's a UI grad, and then she has a master's degree from Purdue.
Man.
So high-powered Midwestern
She's
schools.
awesome, yeah.
Yeah, and so she did that because as the children were aging, she had a desire to be involved in teaching. And she didn't really want to teach high school, but with a degree in nursing, there was always a demand for nursing faculty. So she first started teaching at a school back in South Bend called Brown Mackey, and was there as a professor. And then when we moved out here, she started at Northern Arizona University at the AWC campus, and has just recently been promoted to a full clinical professor.
Wow. So you're on your way out, and she's on her way in.
She has arrived, as they say.
She's ramping it up.
Yeah, exactly. Good. So, in any case, I'll switch places. She was the supportive spouse, and I was the main breadwinner, and now I get to be the supportive spouse, and she gets to be the main breadwinner.
So you've been retired now for 2 weeks?
About 2 weeks, yeah.
How does it fit? Is it good?
So it's kind of interesting because people have asked the question, and it really was the holiday break was more like I was just on vacation. So every year people take off at end of the year. So now it's kind of sinking in as like, hey, great. And I mentioned that I had a family member that needed some help with a health issue, and so I accompanied to Onvita Health yesterday, and I was on the patient side. I didn't even take my ID badge, didn't try to see if it worked or anything like that, and was on the supportive side of things. So
how was it on that side?
Well, it's kind of interesting. You know, as a surgeon, my day normally started around 7 o'clock when I would meet the patients before surgery, and they would complete the process of answering any last-minute questions and then have them started. The goal was to get the patient in the room and started by 7:15. And what I didn't always understand is what that meant for the patient. So yesterday, was the same situation. My family member lived out in the foothills off of Foothills Boulevard. So I had to get up at 3:30 in the morning so that I could be to his house by 5, so that he could be at the hospital by 5:30, so that he could meet his doctor at 7 and start his surgical opportunity. And so that's I think was something that was a little bit different when you have not just the individual receiving care needing assistance, but there's a support team behind that individual. Yeah. And of course, sometimes everything is not just right in order to have an elective procedure, and sometimes there has to be a last-minute cancellation. And so sort of brings to bear the burden that would be. Imagine if you'd had people come in from out of town expecting to help you with whatever the concern was, and they were taking time out of their life schedule, and then someone shows up and there's an unfortunate issue and the procedure can't go on as planned and has to be rescheduled. And so you can see there's
a big disruption.
It's a big disruption to go through those things. So efforts need to be made to dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure everything is ready before you get to that situation.
Yeah, I imagine that kind of contributes to, if the experience wasn't optimal, to those family members or those caretakers, then you're going to hear about it, throughout the course of the day, and that probably contributes to it. Is the early arrival and the whole day getting started so early. People are tired, they're anxious, they're all those things, emotional, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So who set the schedule in your practice? Do you set the schedule, or does the hospital tell you this is what you got to do?
Well, so in a general sense, the hospital gives medical providers the opportunity to book things in advance. So you can schedule like a hotel. You can schedule just for an hour or 2 hours,
Okay, the operating room.
or you can schedule, well, every Monday, I'm going to need a 4-hour turn.
I see.
And so, based on your ability to continuously utilize that time, obviously the hospital considers that time very useful or very important, of high value, so they don't want to waste it either.
Yeah.
So they allocate time according to a surgeon's ability to continuously provide, the patients that are going to use that resource.
I hear you say they might give preference to a surgeon like yourself that was organized, that was filling that room on a constant basis over a sloppy one over here that doesn't know how to run his business.
Correct. And it's not necessarily a sense that the provider is not attentive. The reality is we have in our area a population that comes and goes. So in certain months of the year, we are all very busy and there's lots of people who need our attention. And then there are other months of the year where no one's around. And so people take time off. And so that's the dance. That's the balance between those that are always busy, those that are seasonally busy, and those that, are just occasionally utilizing resources. So that's what happens. And so the hospital actually, has committees that look at the statistics and will notify surgeons if they're falling below a certain threshold. And
interesting.
So yeah, it's a highly valued resource. It's something that the hospital relies on in order to provide the other services that aren't quite so valuable.
Sure. And it's the main source here, obviously, in our community. What caused you to think, well, now is the time, after 30 years plus, that I'm riding off into the sunset? And how hard was that?
Well, I like to say tongue-in-cheek, as I invested in silver, and it's done quite well in the last year and a half. So I kind of reached that threshold and said, you know what, I have sufficient for my needs, and I don't need to keep getting up early.
You're ready for a lifestyle change. Is that what you're saying?
Well, so again, we all age. None of us are immune from the effects of aging. So, there's visual abilities, there's dexterity, there's movement abilities, there's the ability to recall and anticipate issues. So, I didn't see myself as my identity revolved around my career. My career for me has been a means to an end. I wanted to be the best at what I was doing for a career. There's no question about that. But I never, and to this day, I don't feel a loss of personal identity.
Interesting.
If people don't call me doctor, or if I'm not identified as an orthopedic surgeon. Many times in social interactions, I have, for the entirety of my career, always introduced myself as an individual and not by my professional names or titles.
That's interesting. Why do you think that is? You feel like it's kind of like showing off or something? You demand the doctor? Because I have a doctorate in law, and I guess I theoretically could say you need to address me as Dr. Hansen, but I don't, It's because we're seen as lesser than a physician, That's true, right?
Well, I think the, and persons with a PhD, have that same situation. They are legitimately a doctor.
Yeah.
But I think in our terminology in the United States, most of us identify a doctor as a physician. Sort of the problem has evolved in that, people, you can't always depend on what that title might imply. And so there are people who are what they call naturopaths, and they don't have the same training background that someone with a medical doctor might have. They don't have the same licensing requirements,
But they still have the title of doctor?
but they still have the title
Interesting.
of doctor. And of course, many individuals who are seen advanced practice providers, those are physician assistants or nurse practitioners. They use them as primary care providers, and they of necessity call their caregiver a doctor because that's
Right.
the role they're assuming. They're
right.
assuming the role of, what is your health concern and what have you tried and what other concerns do you have? And then they sort of start the process of, okay, let's see, what needs to be tested. Let's see if there's a need to see a specialist, those kinds of things. So
Do you see the industry kind of going that way, more of a physician's assistant kind of thing, more or less, instead of having full-on doctors running practices and things like that? Maybe that's a function of insurance payouts or something. I don't know.
So in the United States, we've put ourselves in a position where the power brokers are the insurance companies for people who are less than 65 years of age and are not on Medicare or Medicaid. The government takes care of those people and sets the standards, and that's become a political process. The commercial insurance has become an economic process, and so there's been a consolidation of who those names are. It used to be when I was practicing 20 years ago, I might have contracts with 20 different insurance companies. And now when I ended, maybe 3.
Really?
You
They
know,
just gobble each other up?
yeah, they just gobble. So United Healthcare, Blue Cross, Aetna,
That's it.
that was it. That was it. And there were a few government plans, Palmetto Care. Humana is actually a type of Medicare replacement. So they call it Humana, but it's really Medicare, but it's administered by Humana. So, and in even companies that are part of that, CVS has been gobbled up or is in partnership, I believe, with Aetna.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so, it's there. In every opportunity to combine administration, there's cost savings, but the usual cost savings flow to the entity and its shareholders, and rarely is just a benefit to the consumer. The idea was that by competition, the consumer would come out ahead, but the whole problem with healthcare as a consumer is that the consumer, meaning the patient, was trying to make decisions, but was not financially responsible for those decisions.
What do you mean by that?
So it's kind of like imagine that we're going to go shopping for a car.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can go to a car lot and you can find vehicles that are under $10,000 and you can find vehicles that are over $80,000. Okay. But they're all called a car. Okay. They all will move you from point A to point B. And so let's say, you have a health plan that says, well, we're going to give you the chance to choose $20,000. But you're going to say, but I really want the $30,000 model. And so the problem was that it used to be when, your employer was the main provider for your health care, people would go to the car lot and pick the $80,000 models, but someone had only budgeted a $20,000 model, and so at the end of the year, what's the insurance company do? They look at their run loss, and they say, well, I guess we're going to have to raise the premiums. Okay. So next year, premiums are up. And, and of course, the providers of that care, the hospitals, the insurance companies that manage pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, those kinds of things, they said, great, business is going good, up goes the prices. So with Obamacare, physicians were cut out of that. Obamacare made it legal for hospitals to overpay physicians as an inurement. That's a good legal term. I like that. Inurement to get them to accept a employed position. And so that's what's happened in Yuma since I've been here. So
gradually, private practice individuals get, I want to use the term, gobbled up or bought out by the local hospital. Right.
They're inured to go to an employed position because the government has made the practice of medicine time-consuming. There have been obstacles related to documentation, record-keeping, things like that distract the physician from his ability to provide care.
Yeah.
And so, why does the physician want to be the manager, the detail person, and handle all these administrative tasks when there's somebody across the street saying, come work for me, you get a paycheck?
Yeah.
And the problem with that, and I'm sure as a professional yourself you would understand this, that as a professional, your loyalty is generally to your client. You're 100% focused on each and every client that comes to you as a professional. But when you're an employee, your attention begins to shift to the person who signs your check.
That's right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if the person who signs your check says, it's really nice if you spend 15 to 20 minutes with your patients, but we're not making enough money if you're doing that. So we'd like you to cut that down to 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we'd like you to use these products. And we'd like you to do these types of tests because we have a laboratory that generates revenue off of those tests. And so you see, no longer is the patient the focus. And so in this dynamic struggle, now the people who are the employers of the healthcare providers are in the dominant position.
Yeah.
They're the lead dog, okay? And if you're not the lead dog, the vision never changes, does it? Or the view never changes.
I'm getting depressed as you're talking. That's not the right word. Discouraged.
Yeah.
Because as you're talking, I'm thinking, is there a way to get out of that? I mean, we're entrenched in it now. It's been years since Obamacare was passed, and this shift of power to the employer of the healthcare provider.
Right.
So the question becomes, is it too late to shift the paradigm or to undo maybe what's been done? Or is that power now going to be kind of in power for a while?
So this gets to a larger macroeconomic issue. Everyone needs care when they're injured or sick. And in the United States, everyone gets it, one way or the other. If it's an emergency and you have no insurance, you can show up.
Yeah.
Now, one of the other things that Obamacare did is it made people responsible for purchasing some sort of insurance. But that's only individuals that have certain economic
means.
And so there's a subset of our population that receives care from other resources, but everyone receives care. And so to answer the question, could it ever go back the other direction? The answer is I doubt it, because the genie's out of the bottle. The big argument they're having right now in Washington, D.C. is Obamacare was advertised as a way to save money, and it's never saved money. And so it's been subsidized, even for those that are employed. And so the cost of care has risen. Some of that cost of care is driven by the requirements of Obamacare. Obamacare has provisions in it that mandate certain care be provided that may not be applicable to every individual, but it supposedly shares the cost by a larger population. The challenge is that it's now reached the point that people are given bills of $8,000 to $10,000 a month for their health care insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's with having a deductible that's probably $10,000
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
And so you're losing the ability of the middle class, so to speak, to finance.
A catastrophic event, at least.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
That's typically what would happen. The aging population, in my opinion, they're going to need more hands-on deck care as they get aging. But like an individual in my position, where I'm 42 years old, try to keep away from health issues. But it might happen. There might be a catastrophe though, where I have a brain aneurysm, or I have a heart attack, or I get hit by a car. So that catastrophic event that I wasn't anticipating, I'm just like, why am I paying these $8,000 a month premiums when I'm not even going to use that, But then this event happens. That's where it really could wipe me out,
Right.
Financially.
Right.
It's number one cause of bankruptcy is medical debt.
Correct.
So what's the answer? If Dr. Ron Clark could fix everything.
Well, I was always a proponent, and I currently still have a health savings account. I think that was, that was the paradigm that inserted the consumer back into the economic discussion. And so going back to our car purchasing metaphor,
Yeah.
if we are going to go purchase a car, and so everyone knows that cars wear out, right? So every 10 years, you're going to think about budgeting for a car. So the government gave you the opportunity to put $2,000 away every year for a car, knowing that in 10 years, you're likely going to need a new car. And guess what? You've already saved that money. You've got $20,000 in the bank, and you're ready to go out and get your car.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a logical way of doing that. Again, we live in an environment where not everybody has that economic capacity. Too many people live,
Beyond
paycheck
means.
to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And so the argument in Washington, D.C. was, well, that's for rich people. Rich people can put away for their health savings account, but what about someone who's working minimum wage and their apartment consumes 40% of their wage and those kinds of things? That was the argument, but it at least put people in the concept of being judicious with how they chose to use their healthcare resources. I can remember being a doctor 20 years ago and giving people options as to what types of care would be available. And lots of times people would say, well, I don't care about getting that expensive test because my insurance is going to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's our reality today, is the outcome of decision making 20 years ago. Always the thought that somebody else would pay for their needs,
Mm-hmm.
okay, has come home to roost, so to speak. And so there are many people who accuse the proponents of Obamacare as designing a system that was in fact made to generate what they call a single payer environment. And that's probably what 80% of the world's population has for healthcare in their country, is that there's, if you're going to have healthcare, the government sets the rates, controls everything.
Yeah.
And of course, that stifles innovation.
Yeah.
And so I can remember it was always interesting to me how throughout the world, other orthopedic surgeons would come to the United States to discuss their innovation or their new improved manner of doing something, because it was in the United States where innovation could flourish.
Yeah.
But now that you come under this environment where there are no more private practitioners, innovation is no longer rewarded. Guess what's gonna stop?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Speaking of innovation, when I read your little bio, I didn't realize you had a couple patents out there.
Well, more than just a couple.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm fascinated by that. I don't know why, but
Well, it was where I was fortunate to be trained. I trained in northern Utah with a surgeon who was also innovative, and which is the reason I selected to be his apprentice. We call that a fellowship in medicine. So I went after I was trained and had my credentials to be an orthopedic surgeon. I spent an extra 6 months under his direct supervision, and he showed me, what he was involved in working on. And so that became very enticing. And of course, I think a lot of physicians go into medicine hoping to make a difference, hoping that I'm going to study the disease, or I'm going to come up with a cure, an answer, and that was sort of my enlightenment, is that I could actually do that. And so even during that training, he had developed an instrument that targeted a way of doing knee surgery that I had never seen before. And I had been using a technique that I had learned in Texas where I did my residency training. And he had never seen that before. And so you can see how two minds interact. And so we developed a way to do ACL surgery, or replacing the anterior cruciate ligament in a knee that had never been invented before, and was clearly an improvement over previous ways of doing it. And so I was actually fortunate to be economically, participating in that adventure. And from that adventure, I worked with other engineers. And one of the reasons I went to northern Indiana and South Bend is that about 40 minutes from South Bend is a small Indiana town called Warsaw, like Warsaw, Poland, and that happens to be the headquarters of three major orthopedic implant manufacturers.
Oh, okay.
So that was where DePuy was founded, Zimmer was founded, and a company called Biomet was founded. Now, those companies over the last 20 years have gone through a different change. Zimmer purchased Biomet, so now they call it Zimmer Biomet, so then now there's only two. And Johnson & Johnson purchased DePuy and purchased another company called Synthes, and so it now operates. So you can see in almost any industry, there's been
Big players that are
big
at the
players
top.
that consolidate, and they have products that used to be made exclusively in the United States. Now some of their products are actually made overseas because there's
cheaper.
Now at the same time, in all fairness, they've had to respond to market demands. Medicare, now that it has power to choose how much it will pay for certain things, has demanded reductions, for example, in the cost of hip and knee and shoulder implants. Medicare just issues an edict that says we will only pay this much.
Yeah, right.
And so then those companies have to innovate ways in which they can meet that
Price point. Sure.
price point. That's exactly right.
Interesting. You think that the quality is degraded then, in your opinion?
No, actually, it's a lot better.
Is it really?
You're much better having any of those procedures, any kind of a joint replacement, 2026 than you were ever. As a matter of fact, it was during my career that we watched people used to have a knee replacement and stay in the hospital for 10 days. People used to have a hip replacement, stay in the hospital
Yeah.
for 14 days.
Yeah.
And over the last 15 years, that went to 3 days,
Wow.
and then it went to, maybe 1 day and a few days in sort of a rehabilitation environment. And now, if people are healthy and of sound mind and body, they go home the same day.
Yeah.
So
A couple of years ago, I tore my bicep. I don't know if I told you about this. I wasn't doing anything fantastic. I was on a rope swing.
mm-hmm.
And at my age, I guess that happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I pulled up. I was going to try and do a backflip. And when I pulled up, it sounded like Velcro ripping.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was my shoulder. I didn't know. I was doing it into a lake. And when I hit the water, I'm like, what's going on here? Something's not right. And so I'm swimming underwater, just trying to figure things out. Like, it's not my shoulder. And I get out of the water, and I'm like, it's got to be my bicep. I didn't know a lot about that injury, but I'd seen it on, social media and stuff. Guys doing curls and just pop.
Right.
And it was definitely that, because my bicep was like up here.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, at the time, we knew the CEO of a hospital where we were at in Utah, and so he was able to get me in the next day, grab that tendon and not reattach it, but drill through my bone and then put it through there. I tell you that because the technology, once I looked it up, was super awesome. Like, I just was blown away at they use fiber wire and the little tic tac anchor and stuff. It's just super cool to me that technology has advanced so much so that I went in surgery. I don't even think it took an hour. Came out, left the hospital, and was on my merry way.
Right.
Kind of,
Yeah.
I was in a sling.
You had to keep it still for a while and let it recover. But it is amazing the opportunities we have to recover and make things functional again. And so that was my role. My final attempt at innovating was I had seen another surgeon in 1992 try to insert a knee replacement implant arthroscopically. So this was in an era where, that type of incision would be a 10-inch incision.
Wow.
And he'd brought it down to, maybe 2-inch incision.
Wow.
So I worked with some engineers in the South Bend area, and we came up with a concept. We did some prototype development. I then went out and did some fundraising campaigning. We formed a company. We got some R&D money, and we made a prototype. We actually made a device that was FDA approved. I put in over 100 of those devices, and it almost worked.
It almost worked.
Yeah. So that was sort of we put a lot of time, resources, energy into that, and we had a device that functioned, but it wasn't better.
I see.
So to be able to convince your colleagues that they should do something different, it has to be better.
Yeah.
And so the device that, even after my over 100 experience, it still took me, the originator, took me longer.
Okay.
So it didn't save me time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's okay. If the surgeon has to expend a little more time to accomplish a task, the patient has a discernible improvement in their recovery.
Yeah.
Well, then you can justify that. If it takes me 2x to complete a task, but my patient gets back to work 3 weeks earlier.
Yeah.
Well,
Worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it. People will be coming to your door. It didn't meet those thresholds. And of course you would never know until you had gone through the entire process of everything that I went through. So
Was that a little discouraging? Looking back,
well, that was the last.
So yeah,
that was the last major effort that I had made. I got to learn about bankruptcy courts. I got to be deposed. There's lots of learning that went into that process.
Nowadays, I mean, I have a 3D printer in the other room. I could 3D print something out of silicone, and play around with it.
Right.
I think technology has advanced a little bit to this extent that they're 3D printing medical devices and new technology. in ways that we can't sculpt it, you can't mold it. It has to be 3D printed because it does it in such a way that it'll create a shape or something like that to accomplish the means to the end. And I think that's just really cool. What do you think about AI entering your field of medicine?
Well, so the big change will be for processes that require interpretation of a lot of different information. So they've already demonstrated in utilizing AIs in emergency rooms that AI is better than a doctor.
What do you mean by that? What did they do?
Well, so when people show up to the emergency room, they show up with a complaint. Something hurts or something's not working, okay? But it doesn't show up with a label, you know.
Yeah.
You still have to figure out what it is. And so, you know, there's the generalized approach is you do an interview, you do a physical examination, then you try to determine, do I need x-rays, do I need blood tests, do I need EKG, you know, what's the test that's going to
reveal the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And usually you start off sort of like with a list of possibilities.
Yeah.
And so the task for the physician is to narrow that list down and come out with the right answer.
Sure.
And so the value in that process is the ability to do so quickly and accurately.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where AI will shine. Okay.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you kind of get that at the end of practice where you have a physician, because they've been practicing for so long, mm-hmm. they can look at that and say, this is what it is.
Right.
But you have the newbies that are coming in, they're learning the practice, and they might not, you know, so it takes them a lot longer to get to that result.
Correct.
Where the old guy could have just got it in 5 minutes, you know. Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I took my dad into the emergency room not too long ago, and he was having issues. And as they were doing the scan, what were they doing? I don't remember, but I could see the screen, and it was automatically, I don't know if it was AI or whatever, but it was identifying the bladder,
mm-hmm.
and it knew exactly how much fluid was in there and it was coloring it and identifying the amount of liquid that was in there right there on the screen in real time. It was wild to me.
Right.
I'm happy to see that. I'm happy that we're moving towards that type of diagnosis era, as opposed to rejection of that kind of technology. You can see, like in my practice in law, when I go to conferences, like you have to go to conferences, you used to have to go to conferences when you would keep up your medical license, right? You have to have so many hours a year of continuing education. I go to these conferences and I'm sitting with my colleagues, you know, from all over the place. And as AI comes into the conversation, I can see it. They have no idea like what's coming. And they're definitely not embracing it, you know? And I'm just thinking, you better get on board here because it's going to replace you if you're not paying attention.
Right.
I don't know if that will get to that point with a physician. I mean, you always have to have, well, maybe, I don't know, with robotics and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
there are certain tasks. So, for example, there are surgical robots that for certain procedures clearly have advantages. The biggest advantage is you can put a camera lens on the end of something that you stick in a cavity like the belly. So you can literally put your eyeball inside the belly, shine a light on it, and without having to make a big incision, you can accomplish things that need to be corrected. Okay.
Yeah, and you've seen that probably advance in your whole history of practice extremely, right?
Correct. In orthopedics, we use robots that are designed to determine the position of the implant relative to the bone. So people like to have knees that are straight and hips that don't wobble. And so the robot can help improve that process. The challenge, again, is that robotic technology costs more money, costs more time, and so far has not really rendered an improvement.
Is that right? Interesting.
For orthopedics.
Sure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So a lot of the training environments where people learn to become a surgeon, they go there and they're trained on a certain technology, which is sometimes subsidized to the environment,
Right.
with the intention of, well, that's the way I know how to do my operation. So when they go to XYZ location in the future, well,
They buy their products, they buy their equipment.
exactly.
It's the same in the law.
Right.
I don't know if you knew that, but when you go to law school, all these companies come out of the woodworks and you get everything that's available and research and all these companies. One of them primarily is Westlaw is the name of it, with the intention that you get a little taste of that and now you're hooked. I used Westlaw through college or through law school, and therefore when I get out and I'm getting into practice, I have to have Westlaw because it's like my crutch.
Right.
So I imagine it's the same in your field where
Yeah, exactly.
it's all capitalism, I suppose. Smart.
Well, yeah. So
On their end.
so again, what artificial intelligence gives is the ability to quickly recover information that's been stored. And so yes, that will be very valuable. It will change everything.
Yeah.
And it will make driving safer. We won't have as many car accidents. That will save society. I mean, it's not just deaths, but it's people that are injured and they're rendered incapable of working, or they have 6 months of recovery before they can go back to work. So you think of all those situations that will go away because of those changes. So there will be, lots of good things that happen. But it's a process. So it's not going to be like tomorrow. And I think that's the big challenge is that, we see on media different types of devices or situations where it looks like it's, ready to go, and, it's not quite.
Yeah. Have you been tracking or paying attention to the Neuralink device from Elon Musk?
So only in the sense that it's supposed to be a connection from your brain to computing.
Sure.
We speak different languages, and it takes a while to learn a new language. I can only imagine how you're going to tell a brain how to speak to a computer.
Yeah.
Not that a brain couldn't learn,
Mm-hmm.
but it's got to be a monumental task.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how it works, but it's pretty miraculous. In fact, I think patient 0, the first guy, he's here in Yuma. Did you know that?
I did not know
Yeah,
that.
so he's a Yuma native, and he was cliff jumping, I think back at college, if I remember the scenario, and hit wrong, fractured his neck, and was a quadriplegic. And so he applied for whatever they can do, and Elon picked him up and put that device in. Now they're to the point where I was watching their keynote address a few months ago where they're now combining that with robotics. So he's a quadriplegic, but he has a robot hand that he's controlling with his mind. Right. I just think that's incredibly miraculous. That's just wild to me.
Well, it goes to the sense of, how important mobility is to us as humans. So, my cardiology colleagues and my, neurosurgical colleagues sometimes look down on orthopedic surgeons as carpenters, but mobility is tremendously valuable to life. And if you can't get out of a chair and get to the restroom and back by yourself, well, that means you live in a nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty big, important function.
Yeah.
And so there's different reasons that people lose that ability to be independent, but that's the major health issue I think that concerns seniors as they age is they don't want to be in a nursing home. I've never had a single individual come to me and say, well, do you think you could get me into nursing home?
It's the same in my practice. Yeah. They say the opposite. If it's gonna be to that extent, take me out to the desert and shoot me. That's what I always hear. I like all the time. So yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. So going to that vein, you coming into this, you'd mentioned that you wanted to kind of hit on that type of inevitability. So we're all aging. We're gonna get to this point where it becomes more and more difficult to move around without guys like you fixing our joints and making everything better. So what would you say to those that are listening or watching that are in that category of my body's starting to kind of slow down. How do I make it
Well,
slower?
so as human beings, we sort of take good things for granted a lot. And I think people take for granted the way our body functions. You know, I have a granddaughter who's now, at that point of almost being able to walk independently. You can hold her hand and she'll take steps and move along, but she can't put the whole game together just yet. And so I think a lot of us, as we get past 60 years of age, we forget how much time and energy we put into the task of learning how to walk. And so it requires balance, it requires vision, it requires strength, it requires coordination. All of those tasks go into the ability to get out of a chair and take a few steps and to return. And so we live in an environment. We talked about foods and how they're so good and we can't put them down. In the United States of America, the majority of the population is overweight, and then they subdivide that into obese and morbidly obese. Probably a third of the country is nearly morbidly obese, and 40% of the country is obese by those parameters. And so what does that mean for your ability to walk and move? Well, people who are morbidly obese have knee arthritis at 4 times the rate. So people talk about, well, I had good genes. Well, you might have good genes, but if you're heavy, okay, you're going to wear out that knee joint. Hips, not as much. Hip joints,
Pretty strong.
well, they're not tied directly to obesity. So, but the knee joint moves a lot more than the hip joint does, and so we see twice as many knee replacements as we do hip replacements in the United States. So that's the biggest issue is, and so you don't really, the best way not to be 50 pounds overweight is don't be 20 pounds overweight. And because once the obesity paradigm begins, it's very difficult to interrupt. Now, new medications, which they call the GLP-1s, they're basically an appetite suppressant in the sense that it's identified certain chemicals in the body and turns off the appetite, and people are able to successfully lose a lot of weight just by getting control over the appetite.
Yeah.
But that's not an isolated outcome. They also lose bone mass.
Oh, really?
And they also lose muscle.
Because of these medications, that's what we're finding now?
Right. And so as soon as they stop using the medications, there's a tendency to rebound, and the weight comes back on. So then people go on long-term maintenance dosage, but that then they result with less lean body mass. So there is no easy way to be healthy without exercising.
Yeah.
So that means that there has to be a lifestyle intervention. Now, people don't like to get sweaty, and so exercise doesn't have to be sweaty. Okay, walking is a tremendous exercise, and so if you can't walk 200 feet, well, walk 100. Okay, and it's start with what you're able to do and move up. And Yuma is very fortunate in that we do have a variety of fitness locations, and they cater to people who are in their senior years. That's it just comes down to motivation. So if your motivation in life is not to be in a nursing home, you need to start exercising.
Yeah. It sounds to me like it reminds me of when we went through that COVID stage. I think we learned a lot of, I hope we learned a lot that those that contracted COVID and were in the hospital for extended periods of time, not moving, just sitting there in the bed, they tended to not fare so well and contributed to maybe their demise, unfortunately. It seems like to me, and I'm not a physician, obviously, but the stories that I heard, it seemed like those medical practitioners that got their patients up and moving,
Right.
go take a walk, Yes, I understand you've got some chest problems going on, but you got to move. You got to move around. I feel like they maybe tended to recover more.
Right.
Would that be an accurate assessment?
I'm not well versed in that environment to give you an authoritative answer. But what I can tell you is that the death rates varied across the globe. So the United States had a higher death toll. We presume it was because of obesity. Obesity had a huge impact upon mortality rates with COVID. And it may have been the sense that, well, we've got a bunch of ventilators. If you can't breathe here, we'll put you on a ventilator. And that, at the end of the disease, we figured out that if you didn't get put on a ventilator, that was a good sign. Well, there's two ways to interpret that assessment is that, well, that means you weren't sick enough to need the ventilator. So maybe that's why you survived, is you really didn't have that much of an impact on your health. But it also could be that, just like you said, being on a ventilator and being in bed and unable to move affected the way other body systems operated or didn't operate, and had an impact on mortality. So
as we're talking about this, what comes to mind is my family. We were studying in Genesis this week, the early chapters of Genesis. Not to get all churchy on you, but my wife and I were fascinated by this idea of man and woman being created, and the Hebrew translation of that, and so we looked at the Hebrew words for man and for woman and that whole creation story. And what we found was that in Hebrew, man and woman are mirrors of each other, and without each other they can't really be their best. Neither one of them can really exist like God wants us to exist, if that makes sense. And it comes from that mirror relationship and kind of like a resistance. And so as you're talking, I'm thinking, it reminded me of that word resistance. As much as we don't want to do it, like I ran a half a mile this morning, I sprinted it, and I did not want to. I'm running this and I'm thinking, I hate this so much, but I got to do it. I'd have to have that resistance. My lungs have to have that resistance in order to grow, to get better, to increase their capacity. My muscles, I got to lift weights. That resistance causes the muscles to tear, and then they rebuild themselves. Otherwise, if there's no resistance, then I feel like we're not our best selves. We're not going to be successful. Even if you're 80 years old, you got to have a resistance, as much as that is not fun.
Right. So in our human form, metabolism, resistance is an important entity that develops capacity. So whether it's muscle capacity, breathing capacity, heart capacity, resistance and training and adaptation, all of those things are what's shown to lead to improved longevity and independence, which is, I think, what most people really want. People want to have a life that's functional.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why the concept of being isolated in an environment like a nursing home, where there's not a lot of variability and not a lot of communication, it's viewed as almost imprisonment. And so people don't want to have that type of existence. So again, all of us need to look at the way we approach our lifestyles and make good decisions about that. One of the good things about the internet is the ability to get good, valuable information is extremely easy.
Yeah.
And you could go on to youtube.com and type in exercise for seniors, and you'd find a variety of things that would be available to start you where you're at.
Sure. Like using bands and stuff like that, band resistance, walking a little bit every morning.
Right.
What would you recommend for those that are in that demographic to get started? Do what you can.
Well, no, I think people need education. So I don't think it's like, tossing keys to a car and say good luck.
To a 16-year-old or a 14-year-old.
Right. Yeah, I I think people need to first educate and then participate. So, education comes to nutrition, food choices, all those kinds of things. Seeing your own physician. When's the last time you saw a physician?
Yeah.
So seeing your own physician, making sure that you're not going to do something that's going to cause a problem.
Sure. To that end, I think AI can play a big role in that too. It's getting better and better. I mean, sometimes it hallucinates, but I think they're getting better and better with these models. I did a blood test just out of curiosity. I wanted to see, I'm 42, so I wanted to see how my testosterone levels were, as they tend to decline when you get up there in years. And so I ordered a test. They mailed it to me. You stick it to your muscle or whatever, you stick it on, pop it, and then it takes your blood, and then I send it back. And then they send me back the results maybe a couple weeks later. So I scanned that. I gave it to AI, told it my biometric makeup and stuff, my BMI and my weight and all that stuff, and my age. And then I gave it the results, and I said, help me out here. And it said, okay, you need to do this, you need to take this, this, and this. So it gave me a recipe of supplements that I take every morning, vitamins, basically vitamins. And hopefully it works. I don't know.
So you're going to do a 6-month follow-up or what?
I've been doing it for about a year now.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I could take another blood test.
Yeah, I'd do a follow-up now and see if it's changed.
I don't know. It wasn't bad. It was more like omega-3 fish oil. My dad makes these moringa pills. I don't know if that does anything, but I just take them, whatever. I figured, what is it going to hurt, right? And then I do a men's vitamin. Those are kind of expensive. It's like $60 on Amazon for a bottle. It lasts me 2 months though. But it's got a lot of stuff in there. Potassium. Potassium is the hard thing that I don't hit my daily, what it recommends for potassium. It's just, you can't get it in pill form enough. And I can't eat enough bananas in a day to give me enough potassium. So I just that's just a loss for me.
Right.
So I don't know if it's going to work. I'll have to take a test and see.
Well, you'll know in 30 years.
Or I'll be dead. If I die soon, there you go.
Wasn't quite set.
What would you tell kids or the coming up generation about taking the path that you took? 4 years of university, 4 years of university, another 4 years of medical school, another 2 years of residency?
Five years. Yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah. And specializing and all that. Yeah. Right. So looking back, would you do it all over again?
So I don't know that I would say that I would do it today going forward. I certainly think that there's a lot of opportunity for people who want to be a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant, especially with AI coming. I think that's going to be right in their mode. You'll have the same ability to interact with patients directly and to make appropriate evaluations and recommendations for care. Surgery at this point, it's really hard to say because, as we get better at things, I think there's going to be a need for fewer surgeons. And so the laws of supply and demand usually indicate if there's an overabundance of surgeons, then
population needs,
compensation levels and lifestyle advantages that I enjoyed, not likely to be there.
Oh, really? So, in this rising generation?
Yeah.
Do physicians' assistants in the operating room, do they have the ability to operate?
Not independent. Yeah.
So you always have to have a physician there monitoring them physically at this point. It can be on Zoom. To your knowledge?
Well, you see, not yet, but you see that's, again, the ability to have that one seasoned mind, like you said, who's seen it before, done it before, to what extent can he direct subordinates?
If he's not physically there in the room. Yeah, interesting.
Exactly. So it was kind of an interesting interplay when I was in my training in northern Utah that we used arthroscopy equipment, which again is a way of looking inside a joint, arthros is a joint and a scope is something to look through. But the connection between the instrument to the video monitor could be projected at home. And so the person, who was my supervisor said, I really need to get this connected to my TV at home so I can be at home and tell you how to take care of things. So that reality is not
here.
far.
Yeah, it's
not
pretty.
far away.
I would say it's here. I mean,
Right.
with all the stuff that we can do now remotely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for coming on. I know you've been in my mind. I don't know why. For probably a year now, I've been thinking about it, and it just kind of aligned where you were now available because of retirement. So I really appreciate you coming on. We'll have to have you back, share a little bit more of retirement and how that looks,
Okay.
when you actually have done it. You've only been in it for 2 weeks now.
Get a 5-year update. We'll see where
5 years? I might not be here for 5 years if I'm doing this vitamin regimen. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I was thinking like 3 months. You're not going to be here in 3 months. It's going to be too hot for you. You got to jump somewhere else.
We're gonna spend a few more weeks away in the summer, but my wife really loves her job, so
And that's year round?
And that's year round, right?
Really? Okay, the nursing school goes all the time. No
well,
breaks?
they have summer courses. They're basically fall and winter semesters, but they do have summer courses. She is able to participate generally in a remote fashion, online teaching, that sort of thing.
Very cool. What hobbies are you going to do now?
Well, actually, I'm taking golf lessons. So I've played golf for 50 years, but I've never really taken lessons. And I'm using an approach that uses video monitoring, and they can actually analyze body position, things like that. So I think it's going to help, but I don't know. I haven't played around since I've had the lessons, but going to do that and going to spend more time on exercise that I really have put off, wanting to get involved in the local pickleball.
Oh, yeah.
course, so we'll see how that goes.
That's awesome. Do you play pickleball now?
I don't on a regular basis, but
you enjoy it when you do? Yeah.
enjoy it when I
Very
do.
cool.
Right.
Well, that's exciting. We'll have to see how you're doing with that kind of stuff and see if it's working to keep you young and sharp.
Two very senior environments, right?
I guess. My kids are in the pickleball.
Are they?
Yeah, my teenagers love it all the time. They're going every other night playing pickleball. I don't know. It's like grown up ping pong to me.
Yeah, it's kind of like playing ping pong on the table,
Yeah.
standing on the table.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for coming in. We will talk to you in a little bit, and I hope retirement is great for you.
Well, thank you very much. And for anyone who cares, I'm a very pleased customer of Deason, Garner, Hansen. So,
Oh man,
I've been very pleased with the help that you've given me for planning for my future.
there you go. Thank you for that. I wasn't expecting that. I forgot about that. I forgot that I do that. But thank you for coming in.
All right.